So what are some of the driving issues that older lesbians face?
First of all, you need to learn to say the word old. Older is a euphemism just like elder and senior and golden, and these are all terms that soft pedal around a word of denigration. And so it's like taking back the word lesbian, we take back the word old, and we honor it, and we rebel in it.
There was no collection of work about lesbians, and old lesbians in particular. What have they done with their life?
The subject of this interview is Edith Daly, Charlotte Emily Stewart. She lives in Mesa, Arizona. She's in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Mid-Pines, California. Date of birth is December 6, 1926.
And the interviewer is Arden Eversmeyer.
And thank you for being willing to have this visit with me and do this interview. I really, really appreciate it.
I think it's important work.
Oh, it's fun, I know that.
Since you've taken off your shoes, I'll take off my Birkenstocks.
Good.
We have over 800 life stories in the collection. We were on the road a lot. These are all completed stories. First of all, you have to understand the time in my life that all of this is happening. I had been in a long-term relationship of 33 years, and my partner died in 1985. Because I had been in public school work, I had to be very, very careful and very discreet, so I did not really know anything about the gay community here in Houston. So I set off to get some information to maybe start something here in town. And out of that came Lesbians over age 50. There were some women in Loaf who were experiencing end-of-life problems. We felt we needed to collect personal stories, first person, so that the information is accurate, it comes from them. Each interview produces 2 books, one for the interviewee and one for the archive.
We're very proud of what the Old Lesbian Oral History Project has accomplished, and we're not done yet.
So, this is Houston. Little buses showing the different road trips that Arden took and the flights that she's taken to do interviews. So I was partnered with Arden's niece. Having her do my oral history was part of my training to become an interviewer for the project. For some women, it's the first time that they've ever said out loud, I'm a lesbian. The hardest part of the training is not the training, it is figuring out the communication with the woman that you're interviewing.
And good morning, Barbara. It is early this morning.
It is early this morning.
Yes. This is basically a life story. So what I would like to hear from you first is about your beginnings.
So I was born in Nebraska in the middle of a snowstorm.
I wrote little stories and I made up stories for my friends, you know, on overnights. They would be the heroine of the story and I would weave a tale with whoever I knew was the boy they had a crush on. And
now, how did you put yourself into these stories?
Well, I would be the narrator. I wasn't participating. I would go to the birthday parties and I'd wear the little ruffled dress and the little patent leather Mary Janes. And I remember sitting there thinking, they are going to find out that I'm not like them, but they can't tell yet because I don't look any different.
Okay, now comes the lesbian part of it.
Okay. My first crush? Oh, madly in love with my junior high PE teacher. I bet you've heard that story before, too.
Were you afraid of the feelings in any way?
No, I didn't know what it was. Had no words for it. There was no vocabulary at that time. No organizations, no periodicals, no way to find each other.
When I was a little girl, I could hardly wait for the Montgomery Ward catalog to come so I could leaf through it and see the ladies in their underwear.
And we got to sit in the front row, and one of the Rockettes came down and kissed my brother, and I was unhappy because she didn't kiss me.
You said that you knew quite young that you were lesbian.
I didn't know I was a lesbian, I just knew I fell in love.
Yeah, I didn't have a name for it, but I used to not go to sleep until the girl next door came and tucked me in at night.
But then she moved out of town, and I thought I was going to die. I didn't know why it was so important to me.
I just had a huge crush on the Statue of Liberty. This enormous, magnificent woman, starkly beautiful, out there in the middle of the harbor. Also unattainable, and that's important when you're a little kid. You can't have her.
Yes. I went down to the card file. I was so nervous about everyone knowing I was going to be looking for the H file. But you know what? I go in the card file, and under homosexual, the card certainly had been used a lot.
And I found the well of loneliness. It was a story of a woman who cared about another woman. I was petrified to talk about it. I figured there was nobody else in the world like me.
Also, the consensus was boys did it, but women didn't. And nobody thought about the hands.
So she laid down, and I got the funniest feeling. And I remember walking back and forth in my apartment, saying over and over and over, but I'm not that. I'm not like that. It took a while to realize that that was just me.
About a week before I was supposed to be married, I broke my engagement. I felt like I was making a mistake. He cried and I cried, and I went to the softball game. So I guess that's when I probably came out to myself.
My first lover, I was a freshman in college and she was a senior.
There we go.
We have, over the years, referred to it as spontaneous combustion because we were the first for each other.
Kind of a relief.
More than that. It was like becoming alive in a real person.
I usually call it getting my aha.
I had my first kiss with a woman when I was 6 months pregnant. She was like spur of the moment, and I was in love. And oh my God, your first heartbreak is so fucking painful. I mean, it's just, you think you can't live, you can't breathe, you can't eat. So I'm hiding all of that pain, I'm hiding it.
Gay wandered off to another room. I think she's going to go collect some stuff for us to look at. Oh, she's come back with 2 guitars, one in each hand.
Part of what's so great about the blues is that a lot of the object of the writing is to find humor in the pain of day-to-day living. She was in the audience, and something just struck me about her. Her smile, I think. Yeah, I just thought she was just absolutely beautiful.
And I had this dream about her, and I had never had a wet dream. So I called her. She said, oh my God, I've wanted to try that since I was 15 years old.
And I had, by this time, fallen in love with my best girlfriend. And we used to double date with our husbands and excuse ourselves and go to the powder room. And we felt it was so beautiful that it couldn't be wrong.
I wrote her and called her and said, I miss you. Would you consider moving here? And let's room together and see if we can make it work. And I mean, it almost seemed like overnight. We were together for 49 years.
Well, I'd say that was a pretty good overnight decision.
And we were just holding hands and laughing and hugging each other. And this couple walked by and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself." The wife just went off. I think it really freaked her out. And of course, I always think, envious. I would love that to be me.
We decided that we'd go to a park and just park, look at the moon and just talk. But we ended up kissing again, hugging again. Next thing we knew, a big flashlight was shining into the car. And we looked and it was a car. We got really scared about the whole thing.
We had 2 purges while I was in college, and as many as maybe 50 young women, usually over a holiday break, didn't come back to school. At that time, women could not qualify for a mortgage. You couldn't get a credit card. There were all kinds of blocks for what women were able to do legally.
It wasn't until I was in the Army that somebody called me a dyke, and I didn't, you mean a hole in the ground or something to do with a river, or what are you talking about? Yeah. I learned the business of keeping quiet.
Some of the things that I was diagnosed with was sexual deviance, not grasping and fulfilling the female role, and for being angry.
During my wedding ceremony, all I could think about was running out of the church. I had such a need to be accepted. I was married for 20 years. Goodness, yes. and I kept falling in love with women.
I got this terrific rash on my face. It was like a mask on my face. I remember saying, so I just want to get out of my skin.
In those days, we were all hidden, and we were never out. I can remember very clearly they raided a bar and they arrested 7 men, and they put their names on the front page. One of the men hanged himself.
If somebody's in the closet, it was so deep, you couldn't find the door. It's like feeling your way in the dark.
And the first most terrifying point was communicating this with her.
I get in the elevator and I go straight to her room. And I open the door and she didn't have the lights on. It was still dark in the room. I said, "Why don't you turn the lights on?" She said, "Sit down and tell me why you're here." And I said, "I don't know. I just know that I can't stop thinking about you. And I don't know whether it's right or whether it's wrong." She said, "What took you so long?" And I said, "What are we going to do?" She said, "Do what we want to do. That's what we're going to do."
It was like the whole rest of my life was just a storybook. It happened another time and another place. And it is as if my life actually began from the day that we met.
Okay, Arden. I need to heat in the car, my dear. Love ya. Love you, sweetie. Thank you. All right. Off we go. Off like a herd of turtles. Bye.
After 3 years of waiting, I'm delighted to say welcome to Queer History South 2022.
This is where the interviewers are. I'm the North Carolina dot, but I since moved to South Carolina. We fall a little bit in love with everybody we interview. So I interviewed Geraldine, ex-nun, in 2014, and I did the U-Haul thing down to her place in 2017. The young folks today don't appreciate how good they have it. We can all read about don't ask, don't tell in the military. I can tell you, I would walk across the street to be away from somebody that was suspected of being gay, because proximity was guilt. For me, this is liberating. I get to wear this and go if anybody says anything to me.
We got to know the work that they were doing, Arden and now Barb, and I just love that unabashed, unapologetic, like we're old lesbians, that's what we're doing, we're preserving our own histories, and I think it's really appealing and refreshing. With lesbians, what we found is we're having to convince folks that they're important. We're going to these women and we're saying, hey, can we have your materials? Oh, I don't have anything. Oh, I wasn't really involved. And then 2 breaths later, they're telling you a story about how they started this amazing program. It may not have been hyper visible and it may not have been on a grand scale, but it was extremely important to the movement and all the resulting communities that sprang from those folks you helped.
Are there initiatives, or how can we get this information to young queer people?
I mean, it saves lives. Like, yeah. And I see that in the work I do. So we're over there whispering, like, how can we get this digitalized? Like, how can we get this to people?
We can't afford to lose our history. All of it, without bias. The truth has to be told and the truth has to go forward. So carry on, y'all. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
We chatted last night.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
We met originally through her brother. She said, would you like to dance? And I said, nah.
This is 1980, okay?
Yeah, 1980.
So disco.
Yeah, and I said, no, I don't really dance. And so she promptly got up and went somewhere else and found somebody else to dance with. And I was like, I don't like this. I really don't like this.
I say I'm here now and I'm queer now. You better get over it. I say I'm here now and I'm queer now. You better get over it.
The coming out process is something that you don't just do once.
Now I knew I was a lesbian. I got into a Hampton cab and I put a feather in my hat. And I rode down Park Avenue, and I thought, you came a long way, baby.
And feminism is just hitting. Ms. Magazine is just coming out.
I read The Feminine Mystique. Oh dear.
The civil rights movement was in full force.
Black power informed my life. To not be worried about the fact that my skin is ashy or my hair is kinky. And I saw myself differently, and I was more okay with who I was.
The windows were painted black, and the police would come in periodically, and that's why Stonewall felt so good.
Night after night, and it became real clear that times are changing. I love being queer.
Well, we decided we didn't want to name the bookstore The Well of Loneliness, so we named it The Well of Happiness.
And I sat down, I thought, I have got to write, and I launched blindly into a novel. Paperbacks had just taken over the world, the pulp paperback originals.
And then we got deep involved in the March on Washington for '93, and our chant was 2, 4, 6, 8. How do you know your grandma's straight?
Are you out to both of your sons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No big problems with it?
Only my youngest son. He said, you're too old to be a lesbian in the first place, and in the second place, you're not pretty enough. But I said, well, deal with it. I didn't like your lifestyle the whole time you were 15 and coming up.
Times have changed and I'm okay being queer.
So I called in on the phone and I said, I'm going to play tennis in the gay games. She says, oh yeah, that's great, Mom. I'm going to be in the gay games too.
I was one of the first lesbians to have donor insemination. I feared that if anything happened to me, she would have no right to him. She couldn't adopt him. And so she adopted me and became his grandmother.
See, I've been in this house since 1960. And we were scared to death that somebody here would catch on. Because I remember there's a little girl down the street that used to come do some weeding and stuff for me. And then she went to college. And the next thing I knew, she brought her girlfriend to our picnic that fall. And they were smooching right in front of God and everybody. And I thought, I didn't say anything.
Times change.
Yes, don't they though? But, yeah, times change.
This past May, when they had Pride March here in Northampton, I wore this shirt and everybody was, yes, yes, yes. And all the young women were saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Here's the Lesbian Avenger shirt. 1993, there was a woman's house was burned and Dyke was written on the street in front of her house. And we demanded to talk to the mayor, and we said that it's not okay. This is a hate crime. Lesbian Avengers eat fire. Our lives were like activism, just by being out and being who we are. These are all of Jackie's shirts. This actually says, All Lesbian, All Herstory Project. She left her partner of 22 years because they were in the closet and she couldn't take it anymore.
It was really crippling to have this part of me that I had to hide because I believed what I had been told, that if you were homosexual, then you were mentally ill. Mm-hmm. From my first sexual experience, I felt like, well, this is where I'm supposed to be. Mm-hmm. This is what's been missing in my life. I felt whole. I really learned how to live with myself, which was a very important relationship. And it was from that base then when I met Edie.
And that's the Jackie I fell in love with. That was like one of the very first pictures that we took together. And it just makes me feel like, you know, I was an intensive care nurse. And so I use a modality in my nursing that's called therapeutic touch. So she said to me, with all this talk about touching, how come you never gave me a hug? And I said, because I knew that once I hugged you, I'd never let go. So that was, we hugged and then we went to dinner and the rest is herstory. We had the strength to stay together for 26 years because we have been willing to do the work that keeps relationships vital and alive.
Well, on Tuesday, she had been really active. She'd been trying to get out of bed, and her therapist came to see her and walked in and just saw all of this. Mm-hmm. She told me, she said, I need to talk to you. So we went and sat down, and she said, what you are seeing in there is not her fear of dying, but her fear or her reluctance for leaving you. Like any two people who make a life together, if it's a man and a woman or two women or two men, it doesn't really make any difference. There are things that you have to give to a relationship. Mm-hmm. And there's good times and hard times. Mm-hmm. And sure, we had all that. Mm-hmm. And nothing is ever perfect. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the good for me so far outweighed the rough stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. I'll turn the recorder off, and if there's more, we'll do it. But I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to...
You're very welcome. I'm pleased to be asked to do it. Mm-hmm. It was really kind of nice. You know, I thought, well, life hasn't been that bad.
Lord, I don't know that my life is so mundane that I got anything.
Almost without exception, every woman I have ever interviewed has said, but I have never done anything, you know. But I don't think we have to climb Mount Everest to be strong and to have had a good life.
So what I love about hearing women's stories is how empowering it is for that woman to tell the story of her life as if it mattered. This law had passed in California. I called up Arden and I said, hey, we're getting married. You want to get married with us? And she said, oh, sure, that would be fabulous.
Let her rip, let her rip. I look forward to each second that we will share. Thank you for helping me to learn that the journey is the destination.
We made a circle of their friends and our friends, and you hold on to the end of the yarn and you toss the ball across to the circle.
This is my second marriage to Arden. We were first married in our favorite place in Texas, the Big Bend country. But this is so special. I love you, sugar. And I thank you for the last 21 years. And I'm looking forward to the next 21. We're not through yet.
Eventually, everyone is connected. It makes it a story.
As we see the spider draw threads from her own body, we can learn to draw cords of energy from our bodies, to weave these into new forms, to draw ideas from our heads, our hands, to weave on this earth.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your love is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
So this started out as this cauldron, if you will, to hold those stories because it feels alive to me. It doesn't feel dead. You are our success. You are the success of women working hard to make it okay to be a strong woman and to be a lesbian.
My hair is gray from wearation. My eyes are roomy with observation. Well, my nose is wide from smelling lies. My mouth is full of much oblige. I know my body's changed. Do you love me just the same? And is it still good to you? My hands are calloused from grabbing at dreams. My breasts are sagging.
40 years. Speaking a couple. Yeah, pick me up.
Brooklyn in the 1970s was more gay friendly than you think.
It's gaydar. Over my thighs. I know my body's changed. Do you love me just the same? And is it still good to you? There's a lifetime on my body. I can see.
We had so many gay bars that were closing up because everybody goes anywhere. I can kiss your wife anywhere.
And as I get older, I realized I can change the rules.
Tired from going nowhere. My knees are scarred from kneeling in prayer. Now there's corns and bunions and my
We're different, but our goals are the same. Pretty much. Yeah. You know, we want to be happy. Shouldn't be ashamed. No. Keep the faith. Just have faith. Things keep changing and moving.
I know it's good to you.